Laughter erupted across L'Avenue 82 restaurant at 7:14 p.m., directed toward the corner of table 14. A poor black guy and an obese girl make a perfect couple for the trash heap. Cruel whispers buzzed with hate. Devin came to this blind date only hoping for kindness, but he soon realized he and Beatrice were victims of a dirty blackmail game. This tough battle forces Devin into a direct fight with the most powerful people in Manhattan. Against hidden cameras and a cold crowd, can quiet support from a detective friend help him protect the dignity of the woman beside him? Who will be the one smiling in the end? Before that laughter, though, there was just a tired man buttoning an old jacket. Devin Carter stood in front of a cracked bathroom mirror in Queens. His apartment was small, but it was clean. He smoothed down the collar of his thrift store jacket. The fabric felt thin and worn under his rough fingers. 3 days ago, a hospital bill for $4.217.83 landed on his kitchen table. His daughter Ruby, 5 years old, needed one more round of tests. Devin worked long hours as a freelance HVAC technician. He fixed air conditioners for people who barely looked at his face. Most clients only saw his uniform, never the man wearing it. Devin used to be someone else. He once held a license as a structural engineer. 3 years ago, he refused to sign off on a building with cracked support beams. His boss called him difficult. 2 weeks later, Devin lost his job and his license both. He never told people that story. It hurt too much to explain. Some nights, Devin still dreamed about his old office downtown. He remembered the smell of fresh blueprints and warm coffee. He remembered the quiet pride of solving a hard problem. Now he smelled copper pipes and burnt motor oil instead. His hands, once steady with a drafting pen, now gripped a wrench. He kept his old engineering badge in a drawer, untouched for years. Some days he almost threw it away, then couldn't bring himself to. He never blamed Ruby for any of it, not once. She was 5 years old, curious, loud, and endlessly hopeful. Her laugh could fill an entire empty room by itself. Devin worked double shifts just to keep her smiling like that. Tonight, his elderly neighbor, Odessa, had set him up on a date. She meant well. She said the woman was kind and successful. Devin almost said no. He barely had time to breathe between jobs and diaper changes. But Ruby pushed him toward the door with her small hands. "Go, Daddy. Have fun," she said, grinning with a missing front tooth. "Who watches you while I'm gone?" Devin asked, tying his one good tie. "Ms. Odessa, duh," Ruby answered, rolling her eyes dramatically. Devin laughed despite himself, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. He kissed her forehead, grabbed his keys, and stepped into the cold. So Devin walked into L'Avenue 82 at exactly 7:09 p.m. Golden light spilled over crystal glasses and marble floors. The air smelled like butter, candle wax, and expensive perfume. Somewhere near the kitchen, a wine cork popped softly. A low hum of conversation filled the room like static. Forks clicked gently against fine china plates. Devin adjusted his collar one more time. He whispered to himself, "Just be respectful. Just be yourself." The floor felt strange under his work boots, smooth and cold. He had polished those boots twice that morning, just in case. Every table seemed to hold people in tailored suits and diamonds. Devin counted exactly 9 chandeliers hanging above the dining room. A security guard near the door narrowed his eyes at Devin's jacket. Nobody said a word, but the stare lasted 3 long seconds. Devin felt his neck grow warm. He kept walking anyway, chin level, shoulders straight. He had lived through stairs like this his whole life. Grocery stores, hardware shops, even his daughter's own school hallway. Devin learned early that his calm was his best armor. Anger only ever gave people an excuse to dismiss him. He reached table 14 and sat down. The chair below him creaked, an old wooden thing with thin legs. Devin barely noticed. He was busy rehearsing something polite to say. A candle flickered between 2 empty wine glasses on the table. Devin checked his watch twice, tapping his fingers against his knee. Somewhere behind him, Silverware clinked against porcelain in steady rhythm. A faint smell of lemon polish rose from the freshly cleaned table. He wondered briefly if this date would even show up. Part of him almost hoped she wouldn't, just to avoid another awkward night. At 7:14 p.m. sharp, Beatrice Montgomery walked through the front doors. Her teal cocktail dress caught every point of light in the room. Gold earrings swung gently with each confident step she took. She moved with the calm poise of someone used to being watched. Her heels clicked steady rhythm against the marble floor beneath her. But watching quickly turned into whispering. A woman at a nearby table leaned toward her husband. Cruel words slid out low and sharp, aimed at Beatrice's size. Another guest snorted quietly into a champagne glass nearby. The sound carried further than anyone at that table intended. Beatrice's spine stiffened for a half-second. Her sharp eyes flicked toward the sound, then away again. She had heard this kind of whisper 1,000 times before. Her chin lifted a fraction higher, an old defense worn smooth from use. A waiter guided her toward table 14 with a thin, practiced smile. He pulled out the same wobbly wooden chair Devin almost sat in earlier. The legs looked barely strong enough to hold a coat, let alone a person. Several nearby guests suddenly stopped talking. They were waiting, watching, hungry for something ugly to happen. Beatrice paused beside the chair. Her hand tightened around the strap of her silver purse. For one breath, something raw flashed behind her eyes. Then her CEO mask slid back, in a place smooth and practiced. Devin watched all of this from 3 feet away. His jaw tightened, a small muscle jumping near his ear. He knew exactly what that chair was built to do tonight. Beatrice hovered near the seat, unwilling to give the room its show. Her mind raced, through exits, through excuses, through every humiliation from her teenage years. She remembered gym class, age 14, a chair snapping beneath her. She remembered laughter then, too, high and merciless and endless. She had promised herself she would never let strangers laugh at her body again. Still, walking out now meant admitting defeat in front of everyone. Her throat felt dry, tight like swallowing sand. That was the moment Devin stood up. He rose slowly, spine straight, without a single wasted motion. Heads turned as he crossed the short space between chairs. Devin reached the wide velvet armchair meant for himself. Without a word, he slid it gently toward Beatrice's side of the table. "I think this one suits your dress better," Devin said quietly. Beatrice blinked twice, caught completely off guard. Devin simply lowered himself into the thin wooden chair instead. He sat there like it was a throne, spine tall, hands calm on the table. The wood groaned faintly under his weight, but he did not flinch. For 3 full seconds, the restaurant went silent. Then, slowly, conversations resumed, quieter than before. Beatrice sat down across from him, still stunned. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly, her voice a little unsteady. Devin shrugged one shoulder, a small, easy motion. Looked uncomfortable. "Figure I'd trade," he replied. They began talking, careful at first, then easier. Devin asked about her work, but not like a stranger fishing for money. He asked what she loved about mornings and what made her laugh. Beatrice found herself answering questions no one usually bothered to ask. "Most people just want to know my net worth," Beatrice admitted quietly. Devin shook his head slowly, meeting her eyes without flinching. "I want to know if you like your coffee sweet," he said. Beatrice laughed then, a real laugh, surprised out of her chest. For the first time in months, she felt like a woman, not a company, not a body people judged. Her shoulders dropped an inch, muscles she didn't know were tense, finally loosening. A waiter arrived, with 2 plates of roasted chicken and vegetables. Steam rose gently, carrying the smell of garlic and rosemary. Beatrice picked up her fork, still smiling from their earlier conversation. "Tell me about your daughter," she said, leaning forward slightly. Devin's whole face changed, softening into something proud and warm. "Ruby's 5. Loud, stubborn, obsessed with dinosaurs," he said, chuckling quietly. Beatrice laughed, imagining the small, fierce girl he described. "She sounds wonderful," she said, meaning every word of it. Devin nodded, pride swelling warm and steady in his chest. Around 7:41 p.m., Devin noticed something strange near the flowers. A small red light blinked once, hidden deep inside the carnations. He kept talking, but his eyes stayed fixed on that tiny flicker. Years of engineering work had trained him to notice things that did not belong. The air conditioning hummed low behind him, steady and mechanical. Devin reached into his jacket pocket without breaking his sentence. His fingers closed around a small frequency detector, a tool from his old repair kit. The device felt cool and familiar against his rough palm. Under the table, he angled the device toward the flower vase. A thin needle jumped, confirming a signal traveling somewhere outside the restaurant. His stomach dropped, cold and heavy like swallowing ice water. Someone was recording this dinner and sending it live. Devin kept his voice steady, but his mind moved fast. He sent a quick text under the table to Dennis Miller, a retired private investigator and old friend. Dennis had once helped Devin track down a landlord who stole his deposit. The two men trusted each other completely, built through years of small favors. The message included a photo of the flower vase and one simple line: "Possible surveillance. Need help tracing this." "Everything okay?" Beatrice asked, noticing the shift in his posture. Devin smiled gently, keeping his tone light for her sake. "Just stay natural. I'll explain in a minute," he whispered. Beatrice's chest tightened, her pulse suddenly loud in her own ears. She trusted the calm steadiness in his voice, even without understanding why yet. 2 minutes later, Beatrice's phone buzzed hard against the table. She glanced down, and her whole body went rigid. Gossip blogs had already posted grainy photos of their dinner. One headline read, "Obese CEO slums it with broke black repairman." Beatrice's hands trembled as she scrolled through comment after cruel comment. Her face burned hot, then went pale and cold. 9 minutes. That was all it took for strangers to judge them. Devin leaned closer, careful not to touch her uninvited. "Who did this?" he asked quietly, his voice low and even. Beatrice's throat felt tight, words struggling to escape. "My ex-fiancé," she finally said. "Raymond Albright." Raymond, she explained, ran a rival logistics firm nearby. He also wanted control of a $41.2 million merger vote happening soon. Humiliating Beatrice publicly would weaken her position with nervous board members. This whole dinner, it seemed, was never really about romance. "We were together 2 years, Beatrice said, voice flat and hollow. "He always cared more about my company than me." Devin listened quietly, letting her get the words out. Sometimes the kindest thing a person could do was simply listen. "I should have seen this coming," Beatrice whispered, mostly to herself. Devin shook his head gently, meeting her tired, angry eyes. "Manipulative people are good at hiding," he said firmly. "That's not something you should blame yourself for." Devin's jaw flexed, a small muscle ticking near his ear. "We should leave now," he said firmly, standing up first. He offered his hand, not to control her, but to steady her. Beatrice took it, grateful for something solid to hold on to. They slipped out through a side door, avoiding photographers near the entrance. Devin's old Ford pickup waited quietly in a nearby parking garage. Rain had started falling, tapping softly against the truck's metal roof. The engine rumbled to life, with a familiar, comforting growl. Beatrice climbed inside, still shaking from anger and humiliation combined. She pulled her coat tighter, staring silently out the window. Before Devin could start the engine, 3 figures blocked the exit ahead. Raymond Albright stood in the center, flanked by 2 large security men. His tailored coat looked crisp, even under the falling rain outside. Water dripped from his slicked-back hair onto expensive leather shoes. Raymond's smile was sharp, practiced, the smile of a man expecting victory. "Didn't think you'd actually leave with him," Raymond called out. Beatrice's breath caught, sharp and shallow in her throat. Devin stepped out first, positioning his body slightly in front of hers. Raymond's eyes swept over Devin with open, ugly contempt. "Stay out of things that don't concern you," Raymond warned coldly. "She's not signing anything tonight," Devin said, voice low and unshaken. Raymond laughed, a short, humorless bark that echoed off wet concrete. "You're nobody playing hero for a paycheck," he sneered. His words carried old, ugly prejudice wrapped in expensive cologne. "He's worth 10 of you," Beatrice snapped, stepping forward despite her fear. Raymond's eyes narrowed, cold and sharp under the streetlight glow. "Careful, Beatrice. The board still trusts my judgment," he warned. Rain dripped steadily from the parking garage ceiling above them all. One security guard shoved Devin hard against the cold brick wall. Pain flared white across his shoulder, but Devin's face stayed calm. The rough brick scraped against his jacket, cold rain soaking through the fabric. His breath came out in short, visible clouds in the cold air. He quietly slid his phone from his pocket, thumb finding the record button. Every threat, every insult was captured in careful, steady audio. Raymond turned toward Beatrice, holding out a folded legal document. "Sign the warehouse transfer, or more videos leaked tonight," he threatened. Beatrice's hands curled into fists, nails pressing sharp crescents into her palms. She refused to reach for the pen resting in his outstretched hand. Sirens wailed faintly somewhere across the block, distant but growing closer. Raymond's men exchanged nervous glances, loosening their grip on Devin's arms. "This isn't over," Raymond hissed, backing toward his black sedan. Within seconds, his car sped off into the rainy Manhattan night. Devin rubbed his sore shoulder, breathing hard, adrenaline still buzzing in his veins. "Come on, let's get somewhere safe," he said quietly to Beatrice. They drove 23 minutes through wet streets to Devin's small apartment in Queens. Neither spoke much during the drive. The wipers squeaked steady rhythm across the windshield glass. Beatrice watched streetlights blur past, her reflection pale in the window. The heater rattled faintly, blowing warm air across her cold hands. Devin glanced over once, checking she was still okay. "Almost there," he said softly, hands steady on the wheel. Inside, warm lamp lights spilled across mismatched furniture and crayon drawings taped to walls. The apartment smelled like cinnamon toast and clean laundry. Ruby ran forward first, pigtails bouncing, arms wrapping around Devin's legs. "Daddy, you're home early," she squealed, then noticed Beatrice standing behind him. Ruby's small face lit up with pure, uncomplicated curiosity. She tilted her head, studying Beatrice's dress with wide, careful eyes. Beatrice knelt slightly, meeting the little girl's eyes. "Hi there. I'm Beatrice," she said, voice softer than Devin had heard all night. "I like your dress," Ruby announced, reaching out to touch the fabric. "It's shiny like a mermaid." Beatrice smiled, a real one, crinkling the corners of her eyes. Something in Beatrice's chest loosened, an old tightness she rarely let herself notice. This cramped apartment, somehow, felt warmer than every mansion she had ever visited. Ruby grabbed her hand and pulled her toward a stack of drawings. "Want to see my dinosaurs?" she asked, already flipping through pages. Beatrice sat down on the worn couch, letting herself be pulled along. Each drawing showed a different dinosaur, carefully labeled in wobbly crayon letters. "This one's my favorite. He's nice, not scary," Ruby explained proudly. Beatrice studied the purple triceratops with genuine, careful attention. Devin made tea in the small kitchen, the kettle whistling softly after a minute. He carried 2 mismatched mugs back into the living room. Devin's phone rang, while Ruby showed Beatrice her drawings on the couch. Dennis Miller's voice came through fast and certain. "That camera traces back to a shell company," Dennis explained. "Guess whose name is buried underneath it? Raymond Albright's." Beatrice exhaled slowly, relief and fury mixing together in her chest. "That's illegal surveillance. That's real evidence," she said, sitting up straighter. Devin nodded, already reaching for a folder Beatrice had left on the table. "What's this warehouse project you mentioned earlier?" Devin asked, flipping through blueprint pages. Beatrice explained Raymond was pressuring her to buy a New Jersey site for $8. $4 million. Devin's eyes narrowed, scanning columns of numbers and structural diagrams closely. 9 minutes passed, while Devin traced load calculations with a steady pencil. His fingers moved down each column, quiet and methodical. Beatrice watched, arms crossed, chewing the inside of her cheek nervously. Then he stopped, tapping one specific point near the foundation notes. "This ground is unstable. Liquefied soil, no proper reinforcement," he said. "This building would collapse within 2 years, maybe sooner." Beatrice leaned closer, studying the pencil marks scattered across the page. "Are you certain?" she asked, voice tight with disbelief. Devin nodded once, firm and sure of his own judgment. "I've seen this pattern before. It's why I lost my license," he admitted quietly. "You refused to sign something like this once," Beatrice realized slowly. Devin met her eyes, something old and tired flickering there. "Different building, same greed," he said simply. "Some people never learn from the first collapse." Beatrice sat back, rubbing her temples with tired fingers. 9 minutes ago, she trusted Raymond's numbers without question. Now everything about their old partnership looked different, darker, more deliberate. How many other projects did he push through like this? She wondered aloud. Beatrice's stomach dropped, cold understanding spreading through her chest. "He wasn't selling me a warehouse," she whispered slowly. "He was selling me bankruptcy." Devin nodded grimly, circling the fatal flaw with dark pencil lines. "We need real proof before the board meeting," Beatrice said, mind racing forward. Devin promised to write a full technical report by morning. Ruby, curled up between them, had already fallen asleep on the couch. Beatrice looked at the sleeping child, something warm settling behind her ribs. The next morning brought a different kind of attack entirely. Raymond, furious after losing his leverage, turned his cruelty elsewhere completely. He contacted Ruby's small private preschool, using his money and influence freely. He implied Devin was dangerous, unstable, someone who caused public disturbances. The school called Devin at 8:03 a.m., voice apologetic but firm. Devin's hands shook slightly as he ended the call. His daughter's safe, familiar classroom now felt suddenly terribly fragile. Years of protecting Ruby alone rushed back into his tightened throat. He sat down heavily on the kitchen chair, head in his hands. Ruby loved that little yellow classroom more than anywhere else. She had friends there, a favorite teacher, a cubby with her name taped on. The thought of taking that away from her felt unbearable. Devin's fists clenched, knuckles pale against his dark skin. He thought about calling Beatrice, then hesitated, unsure if he should. She had already done so much just by being kind. Still, this fight felt too big to carry alone this time. Beatrice, hearing the news, refused to stay silent on the sidelines. She called the preschool director directly, voice sharp with quiet authority. "Discrimination against this family has legal consequences," she stated plainly. The director stammered an apology, backpedaling within seconds of her call. She personally guaranteed Ruby's tuition for the next 3 years. Devin listened from across the room, throat tight with gratitude. Nobody had ever fought that hard for his family before. He mouthed a silent thank you as Beatrice ended the call. Ruby never even knew how close she came to losing her spot. That afternoon, Beatrice hugged the little girl tightly by the door. "Nobody touches you while I'm here," Beatrice murmured against her small shoulder. Devin watched quietly, throat tight, unable to find the right words. 6 days later, the board meeting arrived at Ethelgard Logistics headquarters. Raymond walked in first, confident, carrying a thick folder of documents. Photos meant to embarrass Beatrice sat ready inside his leather briefcase. He believed today would finally hand him full control of everything. Board members filled the long glass conference room, murmuring among themselves nervously. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, catching dust in slow, quiet swirls. A pitcher of ice water sweated quietly at the center of the table. Beatrice sat at the head of the table, spine straight, expression unreadable. Her hands rested flat on the table, steady despite her racing heart. Raymond smiled at her, from across the polished mahogany surface, certain of victory. He straightened his tie, glancing once at the silent wall screen. "Before we vote," Raymond announced, "I have something everyone should see." He gestured toward a large screen mounted on the far wall. The first blurry photo of Beatrice, and Devon began loading slowly. Then the doors swung open with a sudden, sharp sound. Devon walked in wearing a clean, pressed engineering uniform, papers tucked under his arm. Dennis Miller followed close behind him, badge visible at his belt. 2 police officers from the Financial Crimes Unit entered right after them. Raymond's face drained of color, pale as paper under fluorescent light. His hand froze halfway toward the projector remote control. Every board member turned, whispering, confused eyes darting between Raymond and Devon. "My name is Devon Carter. I'm a licensed structural engineer," Devon began steadily. His voice carried clearly across the silent conference room. He placed a warehouse blueprint on the table, pointing to the flaw. This project would have collapsed. Mr. Albright knew that already. Raymond opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. Devon continued, unbothered, walking board members through each calculation. The soil report was altered. "I compared it to county records myself," he said. 2 board members leaned forward, studying the documents with growing alarm. Gasps rippled around the table like a sudden gust of wind. One older board member removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes in disbelief. Dennis stepped forward next, holding up a folder of his own. "We also traced illegal surveillance equipment," Dennis said clearly, "planted at Lavenue 82 restaurant." He explained how the hidden camera led straight back to Raymond. "The shell company registration lists his home address directly," Dennis added. Raymond's mouth opened, then closed again with nothing to say. Sweat beaded along his hairline, catching the harsh fluorescent light above. One officer stepped toward Raymond, reading his rights aloud, calm and practiced. Handcuffs clicked shut around Raymond's wrists, cold metal against trembling skin. "This is a mistake," Raymond stammered, voice cracking under sudden pressure. Nobody in the room believed him anymore. His polished shoes scraped against the floor as officers guided him forward. The fraud charges alone could mean years behind bars for Raymond. Combined with illegal surveillance, his once promising career now lay in ruins. Every board member watched in stunned silence as he passed by. As officers led Raymond toward the door, silence swallowed the room whole. Then, slowly, one board member began clapping, joined quickly by others. The applause grew louder, rolling like thunder across polished glass walls. Someone called out, "Thank you, Mr. Carter," from across the table. Beatrice stood, eyes shining, watching years of quiet cruelty finally answered. She turned toward Devon, voice thick with emotion she no longer hid. "Thank you," she said simply, "for seeing me first." Devon offered a small, tired smile, shoulders finally relaxing after days of tension. 1 month later, life looked different for both of them entirely. Beatrice officially named Devon Chief Technical Assessor for Ethelgard Logistics. His engineering license, once stripped away unfairly, was fully restored soon after. Devon's paycheck cleared Ruby's remaining hospital bill of $4.217.83 completely. He framed his new license and hung it beside Ruby's crayon drawings. Word of Raymond's arrest spread quickly through Manhattan's business circles. Colleagues who once ignored Devon now shook his hand with respect. Beatrice's company stock rose steadily, boosted by public trust and honesty. She donated part of the profits to programs helping single working parents. Reporters called for interviews, but Beatrice kept most of her answers short and humble. She always mentioned Devon's honesty first, before anything about herself. They moved into a larger apartment, with sunlight pouring through wide windows. Ruby got her own room, painted a soft, cheerful yellow. On a quiet Sunday evening, Beatrice stood in the kitchen with Ruby. Flour dusted the counter as they laughed over a lopsided homemade cake. Devin leaned against the doorway, watching them, warmth spreading through his chest. The smell of vanilla and melted butter filled the small kitchen. Beatrice glanced up, catching his eye across the small, bright kitchen. She crossed the room and slipped her hand gently into his. Devin squeezed back, steady and warm, saying nothing at all. Outside, the Manhattan skyline glowed orange under a setting summer sun. Respect, Devin had learned, never depended on a person's income or appearance. It lived instead in small, deliberate choices, like offering someone a better chair. Beatrice had learned something too, something she would never forget again. Real value shows up quietly, long before anyone bothers to notice it. Ms. Odessa visited most Sundays now, always bringing a small dessert. She liked to remind everyone, proudly, that she started this whole thing. Ruby's preschool teacher sent home a drawing labeled "My Family" one week. It showed 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. That night, as Ruby's laughter echoed through the new apartment, both of them finally understood. The people who once laughed loudest at table 14 were nowhere to be found. Devin and Beatrice, together, were the only ones still smiling.